How we doing, folks? Your host Moose here on the Pitt Panthers Football Network as we welcome you to the Season 5, Week 14 Around the NCAA recap show. Your Pitt Panthers finished out the regular season 11-1 on the back of a 34-24 victory over Miami, in which case they were actually up 34-10, gave up 2 touchdowns late in the game to the Hurricanes, but were able to withstand that hurricane warning and came away with the victory. Finished 8-0 in ACC play, winning the Coastal Division and setting up an ACC championship with Clemson in just 2 weeks' time. It was a great game for the Panthers. Obviously, they gave up a ton of passing yards to a Miami team that always seems to pass well against us, but we set them back very early on, put them behind the 8 ball, and forced them into that particular strategy. They actually outgained us, but we ended up with some big plays, made a turnover, what have you. We did have a late interception of our own, which gave Miami the football back, but we did enough to win. Kenny Pickett, 3 touchdowns and an interception, only 200 yards passing in this game, under 50% completion percentage, but a strong day nonetheless. CJ London, who had run for over 100 yards in I think 3 or 4 straight games, really struggled out the gate today. Remember, he was coming off of a toe injury in the last game, and so he tried playing through that. Only 10 carries for 25 yards. Todd Sibley comes in instead, has 13 carries, 64 yards, and a touchdown. Great game for him. Receiving-wise, we really struggled. Paul Lease had an incredible day before going out with a pec injury in the third quarter, 5 catches for 95 yards. Jay Keys had 6 catches for 78 yards and 2 touchdowns, as he always seems to have a great day. Although he did have 3 drops, but his drops are always like, he doesn't just drop wide open passes. I don't think I've seen him drop an open pass all season like I've seen with some people. On Yango dropped a wide open touchdown, things like that. His drops always seem to come when he gets hit after already having the ball in his hands. So it's pretty unfair to call that a drop when he basically has the ball in his hands but gets leveled at the exact same time and loses the football. But it is what it is. Chase Pine, 9 tackles, his best game for us, no doubt, for the senior middle linebackers. Sean Wolfgang and Quell Hamster had back-to-back sacks. Barry Jenkins had a sack and knocked the football loose as well. Jacob Laughlin, an interception. Wolfgang's sack was fantastic because, of course, it gave him a tie for the NCAA record, which was great. 44 total sacks in his career, 1 more sack, and he's going to have at least 2 games to do it. We'll give him the NCAA football record. Laughlin, that interception was gigantic for us and really changed the game. Miami driving down the field, had the ball in our red zone. Laughlin makes the interception in the end zone, and that gives us an opportunity to keep Miami off the score sheet there, despite a really nice drive that they had. Jack Allison had a great day passing the football, 33 of 45, I think, for 394 yards. You can see David Franklin, we talked about him in the slot, the best speed receiver that they have on the team. He had 8 catches for 106 yards. Really strong game. Giovanni Haskins was a good target for them, the tight end. Adrian Randall had a nice game. Very good game all around between these 2 teams. Miami played well. You know, I think that whole game could have turned on its head had Miami scored a touchdown on that drive. We had the interception that would have changed the game completely. I think they would have tied it 10-10 had that have happened. Instead, we kept them out of the end zone, kept them off the score sheet, went up 17-3, pushed it to 34-10, and that was really all she wrote. And we do get some good news on the back of things. We do miss out on tight end Jay Morrison. The JUCO decided to commit to Oklahoma, but we get outside linebacker Dominic Christian, the Altoona, PA product, just a couple hours away from Pittsburgh, did commit to the Panthers, which is great to see. He didn't have a ton of interest elsewhere, only a 3-star prospect, but he did decide that he wanted to come play for us in Oakland. I mean, we don't really play in Oakland. If we had an on-campus stadium, we would, but that's an argument for another day. Jay Morrison had significant interest in Nebraska for quite some time. It was Nebraska and us back-to-back, and then Oklahoma kind of came out of the woodwork very late on and ended up getting a signature from him, a commitment from him. He's a good player, 87 catching, 83 speed, good spectacular catching. His blocking's not fantastic. His impact blocking especially is very bad, but he's a good player. I think he'll come in as a sophomore. So we'll get Nelson as a freshman at 75. Morrison comes in as a sophomore at 76. Nelson's going to redshirt anyway, so by the time he gets to Morrison's level as a sophomore, I think he'll be in a great spot. We do sign Dominic Christian, though, and he turns out to be a bust. 67 overall, -6. But because of the fact he's an outside linebacker, we're going to redshirt him and see where he'll be at in a couple of years. Hopefully he can grow and really be an impact player for us a bit later on, or at least a depth player in the future. Chris Massey, though, we do get to scout him fully, 100% now, and he's an 80 overall +2, so he adds that pipeline of guys that we have from the Northeast. Great tackler, good finesse moves, very good speed for a defensive end as well. He's a fantastic signing, and that means we're going to be able to have a bit more flexibility on the defensive line next year. When we get to the offseason, you'll see what we're talking about. If we look around the country, Georgia beat Georgia Tech. That means neither of them are going bowling, but Georgia at least salvages their season with a 5th win. Virginia Tech keeps Virginia from bowl eligibility, 42-20. NC State gets to bowl eligibility with a win over Wake. Florida State upsets Florida, 29-17. Big win for the Seminoles there. North Carolina showing what they can do with that offense, blowing out Duke 52-27. And then Clemson, a huge victory, 21 points in the fourth quarter, 28 unanswered points to come from behind, down 27-14, and end up beating South Carolina 42-27. Huge victory for the Tigers, which leaves them right in the conversation for the college football playoff and takes South Carolina out of that conversation. If they had won and then beat Bama in the SEC championship, they would have had a statement to potentially be in there, but as it stands now, no chance for them, even if they beat Alabama in the SEC title game. Oklahoma loses to Baylor. Baylor with a fumble recovery, actually, with a minute and a half to play that gives them the victory. Another huge upset. Remember, they beat TCU in the week prior as well, so huge game for them to get another big victory and knock Oklahoma down. West Virginia goes to 10-1 with a victory over Oklahoma State. I think they had 6 field goals in this game and 1 touchdown, so incredible game for the West Virginia kicker to lead them over Oklahoma State and go to 10-1. TCU also wins 35-25 over Iowa State. It's going to set up a huge showdown with West Virginia this week. UCLA 59-35, 7 touchdowns for Dorian Thompson-Robinson, gives them the victory over rival USC, pushes them into the Pac-12 championship game where they'll take on Cal. Penn State beats Indiana 35-32 to at least keep them within range for the Big 10 championship game should Ohio State lose to Michigan. Bama takes on Auburn here, wins 42-32. Illinois beats Northwestern 22-21. That effectively knocks Northwestern out of the Big Ten title game and gives it to Wisconsin. And as we look around, you can see some real interesting shakeups because we got some big games coming here at the end of Week 14 that you'll see the score lines that really change the composure of what's going to happen. Of course, Clemson wins. Texas A&M with a big win over UConn, who struggled this season. Ole Miss blows out Mississippi State 38-10 for a nice win there. Oregon knocks off Oregon State in overtime, come from behind. They kick the game-tying field goal with 9 seconds to play, and then Sam Miller gives the Ducks the rivalry game victory in the Civil War over Oregon State in overtime, so a huge game there. And I can't believe I completely forgot to show it there. Michigan ended up beating Ohio State. The reason we didn't see it was neither team's ranked right now. Ohio State's like number 26. Michigan beat Ohio State, and so that means that incredibly, Ohio State lost their final 2 games of the season to Indiana and then Michigan. They also lost to Rutgers in Big Ten play, and they completely threw away any chance to play in the college football playoff and to play in the Big Ten championship game. Penn State will be in the Big Ten championship game despite losing to Ohio State because of Ohio State's other losses. Michigan with a crazy win to get them to bowl eligibility and knock off their heated rivals. Barry Jenkins, we don't want to not shout him out. Defensive Player of the Week in the ACC. Sack, forced a fumble. Great game for him. Artavis Pierce stays at the top of the Heisman race with a decent game in the loss to Oregon, over 100 yards and a touchdown. Nobody else really was a superstar. Jawan Pass and Louisville didn't play in this week, so he doesn't move around. De'Aaron King had a great game for Alabama in their Iron Bowl victory over Auburn. 5 touchdowns, 250-plus yards. That gets him into the Heisman conversation, especially with the fact that he'll be playing in the SEC championship game, so he's got another game to prove himself. Brennan Wooten was actually injured and came out of the game versus Iowa State, so that knocked him down a bit, but he will be able to play in the de facto Big 12 championship game next week against West Virginia, so he'll still be in for a shout, and Victor Viramontes will be in the Pac-12 championship game, so definitely some guys that can still make an impact in the Heisman race. And as we look at the top 25 right now, Bama 1, Houston 2 at 11-0 and undefeated, Clemson 3, Pitt 4, Cal 5, West Virginia, you'll note, is 9 at 10-1 in the coaches poll rankings, but keep in mind that is not going to affect how the college football playoff rankings play out. Basically, these rankings are just to show you how teams are doing. we're going by our own gut intuition. We're the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, and we'll decide based on what happens who's going to be in the college football playoff. You can see Oklahoma falls all the way back to 23 with their loss to Baylor. Florida back to 16 after losing to FSU, who comes into the polls at 22. Wisconsin at 24 after beating Maryland. They'll be in the Big Ten championship game. And Oklahoma State falls back to 25 with their loss to West Virginia. USC and Northwestern both dropping out of the polls. Pitt wins the Coastal Division in the ACC. Georgia Tech finishes second, but won't be going bowling because they didn't win a single non-conference game. Clemson easily wins the Atlantic at 8-0. It's going to set up a great showdown between those two teams. And West Virginia will be playing TCU for the right to win the Big 12 championship this week. Texas technically could earn a share of the Big 12 championship, but they won't have the head-to-head because if West Virginia wins, they'll be 8-1 and nobody can catch them. If TCU wins, they'll be 7-2, and they'll have the head-to-head over both West Virginia and Texas, having beaten both of them. It's also going to have huge implications for the college football playoff, which we'll see here at the very end of our coverage. But you can see all the games slated to take place in Week 15, the final week of the regular season around the country. Some really, really big games. Army taking on Navy. Their annual showdown should be fantastic because Army's 10-1. They're looking to maybe sneak into a New Year's Six game if they could somehow get that kind of look from the College Football Playoff Committee. They're not going to be in the playoff. There's no doubt about that. But if they come away with a victory, maybe they could get a New Year's Six bowl, which would be crazy. Navy could finish 9-2 as well in the regular season here if they can end up upsetting their heated rivals from West Point. Should be a great game in Philadelphia. Texas takes on Kansas State in a battle for the number 7 Longhorns. They should have no problem with the Wildcats, and that win would push them to 10-2. Oklahoma taking on Oklahoma State. It's Bedlam. It's always a great rivalry game. Neither team's lived up to maybe their expectations this year. Oklahoma State, talent-wise, has probably been pretty well. They've been led by freshman running back Antoine Byrne-Horton. But Oklahoma looking to finish off with a victory and salvage a struggling last couple of weeks for them as they've lost to West Virginia and Baylor now in back-to-back weeks. Texas State taking on Arkansas State. We thought Arkansas State had wrapped up the Sun Belt. Instead, Texas State's had a great season, sets up basically a Sun Belt championship game here in their final games of the season. Arkansas State definitely the favorite, but look at the defenses here. Number 1 versus number 5 defenses should be a great matchup there. Houston will not have an American championship game this year, so keep in mind this is their last game of the season. The number 2 offense in the country by scoring, number 1 pass offense. They're looking to finish off and have another signature win, a blowout, to convince the College Football Playoff Committee that even without a conference championship game, they deserve to be in the College Football Playoff. Because remember, the American lost UConn to independent status, which put them down to 11 teams in this universe, which means Houston doesn't have a conference championship game. Neither will West Virginia or TCU, and that's what this game effectively is. The winner of this game will win the Big 12, and it'll be huge because depending on other results around the country, TCU, West Virginia, both still within a shout of the College Football Playoff. West Virginia, definitely, if they go to 11-1, they'll have won their last 4 games all over ranked opponents, and that would be a huge, huge stretch run for them. TCU, I mean, at 10-2 with how impressive they've been offensively, I think they're definitely still in for things as well, so it should set up a great matchup with the winner definitely at least having a case for the College Football Playoff. West Virginia, especially if they win with 1 loss, will certainly be in the conversation. There's no doubt about that. As we take a look to finish this out at the College Football Playoff rankings as they stand right now. And number 1 in the country, I don't think anybody had any doubt about it, is Alabama. 12-0 so far this season. They've been fantastic. Number 1. Now, controversially, number 2 is Clemson at 11-1. They do have a loss on their resume, but they have a much better strength of schedule than Houston does, who's currently undefeated, sitting at number 3 at 11-0. So a little bit of a shake-up there. Pitt sits at number 4 just because they haven't been as dominant as Houston has, so their 11-0 pushes them over Pitt at 11-1, who sits at number 4. Now, of course, Clemson and Pitt are going to play each other, and so that's going to leave the door open for whoever of them loses for the likes of Cal sitting at number 5 at 11-1. They'll be in the Pac-12 championship game. I think if Cal wins the Pac-12 championship game and Pitt or Clemson, whoever loses, Cal's going to leapfrog over that school and get into the College Football Playoff, assuming Houston wins this week as well. Then you have West Virginia. Let's say they win. They're at number 6 at 10-1. They go to 11-1. Let's say Cal loses in the Pac-12 championship game, goes to 11-2. They're out. Pitt or Clemson loses, whoever loses that game, you're going to have to put them head-to-head up against West Virginia. Does an 11-1 West Virginia get in over 11-2 Clemson or 11-2 Pitt, especially if they play a close game? If it's a blowout, certainly they will, but if it's a close game, who knows? Then let's say West Virginia loses, TCU wins. They're right behind there at 10-2. If they get the victory, and then you're comparing them, let's say Cal loses, goes to 11-2. Let's say Pitt or Clemson loses, goes to 11-2. You got two 11-2s and a 10-2 that'll be competing for that 4th spot. So definitely some shakeups still available here in the college football playoff discussion. Let me know what you think is going to happen. Is West Virginia going to beat TCU? Is Navy or Army going to win in the annual Army-Navy rivalry game? Who's going to come out victorious? How's the playoff going to shake out? We'll see you guys, as always, in the next episode. Hail to Pitt. We'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.